I'm fighting like hell, and we're going to protect Canada. He's underestimating the Canadian people, the resilience of the Canadian people, and the strength of the Canadian people.
Well, what people think here in Canada, that China is getting better treatment than their closest allies and friends.
Ontario just made a dramatic move that signals a sharp break from its long-standing partnership with the United States. In a deal worth $20 billion, the province signed an agreement with Volkswagen to build one of the largest electric vehicle EV battery factories in North America. However, there's a twist. Not a single battery will be sent to the U.S. The new plant in St. Thomas will produce enough batteries annually to power 1 million European EVs, and it's a bold move away from U.S. dependence. This decision isn't just about electric vehicles, it's about strategic autonomy. For decades, Canada and the U.S. worked together, building supply chains and trade agreements that assumed a lasting mutual partnership. But Ontario just broke that mold. Why? The answer lies in the Trump administration's decision to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. What Washington framed as a protectionist move, Ontario saw as a wake-up call. The turning point came when Washington slapped a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. Ontario recognized the threat to its economy and didn't wait for the U.S. to back down, it took action. Instead of just enduring the tariffs, the province redefined its future. Ontario's answer wasn't just to protect its interests, it became a strategic power move. The Volkswagen Gigafactory in St. Thomas is a statement. In addition to creating 3,000 jobs at the plant, thousands more will benefit across Ontario's evolving energy sector. Workers, previously part of traditional auto supply chains, are being retrained to work in battery assembly and energy systems, shifting the entire workforce's focus. Raw materials for the factory come from Ontario itself: nickel from Sudbury, lithium from Northern Ontario, and cobalt from Indigenous managed lands, turning these minerals into critical assets in the new energy economy. By pivoting toward European markets, Ontario avoids the volatility of U.S. politics and trade policies. It locks into Europe's stable climate mandates and battery supply quotas, securing its place in the global EV supply chain. This shift isn't just symbolic, it's structural. Ontario has now reoriented itself from North American integration to global export, with no ties to the U.S. market. Even the plant's power supply is symbolic, as it runs on Ontario's nuclear and hydroelectric grid, which the U.S. depends on but no longer controls. The consequences of this move extend beyond the economic. In early 2025, Ontario imposed a surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. as a warning shot. The implications were clear. Ontario's grid is so tightly integrated with the U.S. that disrupting power flows could have immediate and severe effects on U.S. states like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. If Ontario pulls the plug, rolling blackouts could begin within days. This isn't just about energy, it's about power. Ontario had just weaponized cooperation itself, using the very infrastructure built for peace as leverage in a tariff dispute. The U.S. is now realizing that its decades-long reliance on Canadian power is vulnerable. Hospitals in rural Minnesota reviewed emergency generator plans, while Michigan began rationing peak usage. Officials from Vermont to Wisconsin scrambled to update old assumptions about grid security. Ontario had shown that when trust in the system evaporates, the power lines, once the symbol of peaceful cooperation, become the site of a profound energy crisis. The shift is also visible in Canada's foreign policy. In 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney made a major statement by visiting Paris first instead of Washington. The symbolism was clear. Standing alongside French President Emmanuel Macron, Carney announced a review of every defense and procurement contract tied to the U.S., signifying a shift toward Europe. Behind the scenes, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister accelerated talks on expanding the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, with the European Union and began pushing for closer defense integration with Europe. Canada's defense posture is also changing. Major defense players in Canada, such as BAE Systems, Dassault Aviation, and Saab, have shifted their focus away from U.S. contracts and are now aligning directly with European buyers. This move isn't just about military security, it's about strategic autonomy, industrial policy, and resilience. Canada is building relationships with nations that offer long-term contracts, fewer political strings, and mutual technology sharing. As the shift in defense contracts plays out, Ontario is quietly becoming a hub for European capital. Once idle electric vehicle charger factories are now humming again, not for Detroit but to supply Hamburg and Rotterdam. The Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Corridor has attracted Dutch and German investments, and this is just the beginning. Facilities are being built with European regulations in mind, and workforce training programs are being designed in collaboration with EU partners. In Alberta, hydrogen production is being redirected toward Asia and Northern Europe, while wind power projects in Saskatchewan are now tied to Nordic energy markets. This isn't isolationism. It's insulation from the unpredictability of U.S. trade policies. Canada isn't shutting the door on the U.S. It's building a second door to markets that won't close on a whim. The realignment is slow but irreversible, as Canada quietly diversifies and builds deeper relationships with European and Asian partners. One day, the U.S. may look up and realize that its former economic partner has turned its focus elsewhere. In Ontario's Pickering nuclear station, engineers faced a challenge no politician could solve. The province's power grid is so deeply intertwined with the U.S. that turning off electricity exports could destabilize both countries' grids. Emergency simulations showed that if Ontario stopped supplying electricity, it would trigger blackouts in U.S. states like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, causing widespread disruption. This crisis revealed an uncomfortable truth. The grid is not just about electricity, it's about trust. When that trust is shaken, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Ontario's shift away from the U.S. is a reminder of just how interdependent the two regions are, but it's also a warning. Trust once lost doesn't easily return. Meanwhile, European capital is flooding into Canada. Clean energy projects across Saskatchewan and Alberta are being funded by Norwegian, Dutch, and German investors who are securing Canadian lithium, cobalt, and energy infrastructure for the next generation of climate technology. This is a confidence migration, not just a capital flow. Canadian pension funds are also redirecting billions into European-linked industrial projects, signaling that the future of North America's green economy may no longer be tied to U.S. markets. Canada is quietly reshaping its economic and industrial landscape. This isn't just a shift in policy, it's a fundamental rebalancing. Ontario has shown that it's no longer waiting for permission from Washington to shape its future. It's building its own path, one that avoids the volatility of U.S. politics and embraces a more stable, long-term relationship with Europe.
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget like and subscribe for the latest updates on global politics.